All right. Hi, I'm Tony Richards, and I'm here visiting with Zaki at Corvair Unlimited. And Zaki, you've been a Corvair mechanic for 60 years?
Close to it.
Close to it.
Yeah. I've had this hole in the wall place since June of 1965.
65?
Yeah. So we worked on Corvairs ever since.
Not at this place, though.
I've had several locations.
You started at Ellis Brooks?
I started the shop on Turk and Van Ness, June of 1965.
Okay. Turk and Van Ness.
Yeah. And used car guy up front, Dan Marini, he knew all of the dealers. So he said to Ellis Brooks, there's this guy that knows how to work at Corvairs, and you ought to meet him. So Ellis Brooks came and took me to lunch at the Ratz Keller's restaurant down on Polk and Turk. It's downstairs, the German restaurant. I don't know if it's there now. And he said, I'm going to hire you to work on my Corvairs. Just like that.
Just like that. He didn't ask you, he told you.
Yeah. And I went there at 6 o'clock in the morning, started them all up, cleaned up the oil under them, and they were for sale. And then whenever one of them broke down, I would be the guy to work on it.
These were new and used?
Brand new.
Brand new.
Brand new.
Are they leaking oil when they were new?
It came off the truck. PMT used to deliver them. They blocked Bush Street. You know, Ellis Brooks on Bush?
Yeah.
That truck was back across Bush Street so they could unload the cars.
There's a slight hill there, right?
Yeah, going down toward Van Ness.
Yeah.
And when they came off the truck brand new, there was a leak. Some of them didn't, but some did.
Wow.
Yep. And I'd clean up the oil in the mornings and got them all running. And they would sell. People would buy them. I mean, they would buy them just like that. Beautiful car.
Was this the late model?
The early models were already out when I started working, but they were 65 and up. Like 65, 66, 67. I watched them come in brand new.
Yeah,
brand new.
Jeez.
And did work on them, little stuff. It seemed like it was so pretty people would buy it, but they didn't seem to realize it had a rear engine, and that'll fool you. So there are a lot of issues with that.
People not used to driving a rear-engine car.
Yeah. You know, it's the inertial thing where the back want to catch up with the front all the time.
Yeah.
So, and it had cheap tires on it. It wouldn't stay on the road. A lot of little stuff. So we started putting radials on them in like 66 or 67. People started buying radials from Sears and Roebuck. They had a good road handler, and that changed the whole thing of the Corvair. We had a lady with a yellow 63, and she was like, I can't cross the Golden Gate Bridge without this thing changing lanes. So we put some radials on it. She fell in love with her car all over again. Had to paint it again, and never got rid of it. It was like, oh, it's just amazing. I can let the steering wheel go as I cross the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah. So the secret to that car would be radial tires. It's independently suspended, so it's got to have something like a radial on there. Yeah.
I did know low tire pressure in the front, of course.
With radials, not necessarily so. You can put 30 pounds, 35 pounds all the way around. But with the bias, cheap, whatever they had on there.
Yeah.
15 pounds of air in the front, 18, 20 in the rear was the norm for those kind of tires. So I had no idea I would be working on them. I just needed something to do. I didn't want to be a police officer or a fireman or work at the airport.
So you came to San Francisco in 49?
Yep. My mom brought me here in 1949. My sister was already here. In the early 40s, she's working at the shipyard as a welder during the war.
Hunters Point shipyard?
Yeah.
So you were a little kid?
Yeah, I was 7 years old when I came here in 49.
You came here, oh, you're a little kid.
Yeah.
Wow.
Of course, I didn't stay out here. My mom didn't want me to go to school here. She didn't like the school system. So she sent me back to Louisiana to go to school. I'm glad of it now because they teach better down there than they do here. So then, after 16, 17 years, I went to Air Force. Stayed in there 6 years. I got out and landed in San Francisco again. And like I said, I didn't want to be a policeman or a fireman or anything, so I created this job.
So how did you get interested in working on Corvairs in the first place?
Well, I was already a mechanic, so I wanted to do something where I could be free. I didn't want to have the 9 to 5 or... And being a mechanic was like that. It's just that people in general have their own mechanics they were going to. So it would be pointless to me to open up a garage, just general repair, because I wouldn't have any business. I wanted to pick something that no one was working on.
Find a need and fill it.
And the Corvair was the car out of all of them. The Corvair was the car no one was working on. So I just started working on it. And first one I worked on was 1960. It had a flat cam in it. And this guy was like, it must have had about 14,000 miles on it. And the cam lobe was flattened, so it was backfiring in the carburetor. And the dealer couldn't figure it out. So they brought it to me, and I took off the valve cover, and one of the valves wasn't working. So I pulled that rocker, and when I got that lifter out, it was concave. So there's got to be something else. So that was a flat cam, and I took that thing apart. I had stuff scattered everywhere, and I put it back together. I didn't have a book. I was just using my head. And the first, I misaligned the cam and the crank, the timing, so I had it retarded about maybe 4 degrees. It ran perfect, but didn't have any power. So I took it apart again, and I found out that. And then it was perfect, except the oil pan was leaking, so I had to figure that out. And that guy sold it, top dollar. It was like brand new. It was running so smooth. First one. That's when this guy said, look, this guy could fix this car. He said, you guys having all kinds of issues up there, man. This guy could fix this car. I watched him, you know, and that's when all hell broke loose. I was working on Corvairs for all of the dealers in San Francisco. It was Les Vogel, Gear on Gary, Holiday, Ellis Brooks. That's all of them, all the Chevy. There was a lot of Asian Chevy dealers here in the city back in those days.
I can remember Gear on Geary.
Remember, yeah.
And Holiday was on Terraville.
Yeah,
and 18th Avenue. And then, Les Vogel was down the street from Ellis Brooks. Yeah. No, that's Les Vogel's on
George
Van
Olson. George Olson.
Yeah, Olson. Isn't that funny? They're a few blocks apart.
Yeah.
Well,
Van Ness was Auto Row.
Yeah, I remember Auto Row.
Yeah, from Golden Gate all the way down to maybe Green Street.
Yeah.
Auto
both sides of the street, art dealers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there was Gateway Chevrolet in Daly City.
I didn't work on them. Even Stewart Chevrolet, I didn't do any work for them either.
Oh, yeah.
And over in Oakland, Cochran and Sally, they had one. They'd call me up every now and then for small stuff. But I never really did anything except mainly the dealers in the city here.
Yeah.
And the wholesalers. Guys would buy Corvairs. The wholesalers, used car wholesalers, would not work on those. There was a time I'd have 20 of them lined up on Turk Street. I had so many of them on Turk Street until that 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock tollway zone.
Yeah.
The police captain came by and he says, we're going to bypass you. We want right here in the tollway tickets. He says, this is phenomenal. I'm not going to let you work here.
That was nice of him.
Yeah. Because before that, I was like scrambling to move cars between 4 and 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And still working on them.
So Ellis Brooks hired you. He said you're coming to work for me,
Yep.
and then
After about a year of that, I started working out of my own garage, a little place I had on Turk and Van Ness. I had it when I was working with him. I also was in the Air Force Reserves, so on weekends I'd go out to Hamilton Air Force Base and hang out.
Oh, you're busy.
Yeah. I was a kid,
Yeah.
23.
Well, I remember back in the 70s, you had a shop on Golden Gate.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then redevelopment took that block over and kicked.
They gave me the place in the first place.
Oh.
See, the director of the redevelopment agency was Gene Settle,
Oh.
and he had a 67 Corvair.
Oh.
So he said to me, we have re-rental property, but you stay there until we get ready to develop the place. So from 69 to 73,
Okay.
I had this re-rental place on Golden Gate. 73, 74, they wanted to redevelop the whole place. So I moved. And from Golden Gate and Golf, I moved to South Park. Remember South Park?
Yeah, I know South Park.
Yeah, I moved there from 73 to 81. Then I moved down here on Griffith Street
Okay.
from 81 to 86. And then I moved here in 86. Been here ever since. 36, 37 years. So if you add all that together, it's like 58 years or so working on these things. Yep.
Okay, this is Special Interest Autos from May and June in 1974. And now the magazine is called Hemmings Classic Car, but originally it was Special Interest Autos. So in this issue, there's some unknown Corvair on the cover. In this issue is an article about Corvair. And it's an early turbocharged convertible owned by this guy that worked for Del Monte, named Ron Myers. And the late model turbo Corvair convertible with me driving it, my car. So we're featured in the article. It compares a brief history about the Corvair and compares the early and late turbo models, the differences. So anyway, it was quite an honor to be featured in this magazine back in the day. So this is an extra copy, Zaki, that's for you.
Great.
All right, so thanks for letting us talk to you.
It was
Fascinating history.
it's just some of it.
You got more?